Hello and good day to everyone. I'm John Valiant Jordan, an undergraduate student of De La Salle University, and I will be presenting my ongoing undergraduate thesis entitled Poderoso, an analysis on the power, place, and performance of popular devotion to the Black Nazarene. So, a brief introduction. So, this is a research grounded on my personal experience as a devotee of the Black Nazarene. So, from my experience as a devotee. This is a multi-generational devotion passed from my ancestors until it was taught and formally introduced in my age of reason, where I was started to be brought to the Church of Quiapo, attended processions, and all the other traditions that your family does in honor of the Black Nazarene. And because I have witnessed some of these traditions and how people celebrate and perform their devotion to the Black Nazarene, it led me to have this ambiguous concept of power in the devotion because I have witnessed all of its practices, its performances. So we already know, most of us, I believe, that the image was brought by the Augustine and Recollect Fathers in the beginning of the 17th century. So this is a life-size image of Jesus Christ of fair color that is carrying the cross and is made of dark wood, carved by a Mexican carver that was brought to the Philippines. But colloquially, to us, even now, it is known as the Nazareno. But formally, it is known as the Tres Caídas or the Three Falls, which owes to the biblical accounts of the three falls that Christ had on his way to Calvary. So, my hypothesis for this research is that if the devotees have this clear knowledge of their devotion, one would note the distinction between the official practice of popular devotion and its nuanced forms. Statement of the problem for this research is threefold. How do devotees perceive the concept of power in their practice and performance of popular devotion to the Black Nazarene? Second, what are the developments in the devotion that happened with regards in their perception of power to their performance and expression of devotion? Lastly, in what ways does this affect their religious attitude and disposition as a devotee? For the objectives, Um, it first we wish to further expand the discourses on the idea of power and potency in Southeast Asian studies, highlighting the lived experience of Filipino Catholic devotees. Second is to contribute to the existing studies in the devotion to the Black Nazarene of Quiapo. And lastly, to result into creating a diagram mapping the dimensions, levels, and places of power in the Church of Quiapo and in the practice of the popular devotion to the Black Nazarene, not only here in Quiapo, but in other parts of the Philippines and of the world, where there is a present devotion to the Black Nazarene. First, before we delve into the study of the Black Nazarene and its popular devotion here in the Philippines, we must discuss first the context of religion here in Southeast Asia. So we have here a picture of the Emerald Buddha. I place it here since in Thailand somehow it kind of counterparts it mirrors the devotion that we Filipinos have here in the Philippines in terms of its extent and perceived notion of power. So the Southeast Asian region provides a home to most of the world religions. And in Southeast Asian society, there are two realities. So first is the religiosity of the people. How religious are we? How religion plays a part in our lives. And poverty present and experienced. So with no doubt, religion is a very integral part of our society's culture, which changes through the course of time through new developments and interpretations. Philippinization of this foreign faith, the Catholic faith, underwent first in a process of what we call syncretism, where folk practices and an indigenous set of beliefs blended very well with the Catholic faith when it was introduced to us. So folklore has formed a major part of our narratives, religious beliefs, lives, and worldview of our society, who traces its indigenous nature to a certain place, which in turn expresses our cultural identity. So part of these beliefs is the use of objects as manifestations of the divine or God, to which they direct their expression of faith. In fact, in our nation's history, the image of the Santo Niño de Cebu was used by natives as an agent for their prayers and supplications, such as when drought occurs, the image is bathed in the sea for rain. This practice has syncretized with with the liturgy of the celebrations in Cebu and in private devotions as well. So this proves that indeed objects, in this case images, are essential in the practice of the faith of the people. The concept of power, according to Anderson in Southeast Asia, has already been present in the polities in the region. However, it differs largely from its Western notion. According to his comparison and from his studies in Java, the Western tradition, or what how the West perceives power, is that it is something abstract. The sources of it are heterogeneous or comes from multiple sources: military power, political power, economical power. The accumulation of power has no inherent limits, it's limitless. And lastly, it is morally ambiguous. There may be questions of legitimacy on how moral it can be. However, in the Javanese tradition here in Southeast Asia, when Anderson studied Java, power came as something concrete. Power is also homogeneous or comes from a single source. In this case, it is something from the divine. The quantum of power in the universe is always constant. It is always constant. It never diminishes. It never exceeds. Lastly, power does not raise the question of legitimacy because power is. Power is. So the Southeast Asian concept of power also centers on the concept of space and periphery, like this image that you see on your right, an image of a mandala. Geertz also offers us that an intimate aspect of the relationship between nature of power and the persona is also very essential. And Walters, on the other hand, adds another aspect of this concept of power in the definition of soul stuff among the Khmers of Cambodia that roughly translate to the possession of power. However, as Father Mercado would put it, the Filipino concept of power differs in ways that it uses objects and symbols as agency. Popular devotion may be defined as collective prayers and rituals done by the people with no official recognition or liturgical origin. It may come from political and historical events, private revelations and visions, people doing their own rituals out of popular devotion because of clericalization of the liturgy, charismatic leaders and leaders of cruzadas or crusades, cold liturgy, and lastly, divine inspiration by the Holy Spirit and the people of God. So, this religious experience of the people in their devotion forges an interpersonal relationship with Jesus Christ. And this may be seen through how people define Jesus Christ through the context of their own experiences, such as wonder worker and provider, as what Wilfredis Jacob has inferred in his series of interviews with the devotees of the Nuestro Padre Jesus Nazareno. So, twofold explanation as to why people are drawn to practice popular devotion is because of the religious experience, kanilang mga karanasan sa kanilang pagdedebosyon kay Kristo, and a pull by the sense of the divine. So, a theoretical and conceptual framework for this study focuses on religion in Southeast Asia, highlighting the concept of power of Benedict Anderson and its application and understanding in the context of Catholicism in the Philippines by Father Leonardo Mercado and other Filipino clerical scholars. With this diagram, I wish to convey the dynamics of the flow of power in Quiapo that aims to discover the essentiality of proximity of objects to the source of power, in this case, the original image of the Nazareno, as discussed by Clifford Geertz and Reynaldo Ileto in their respective studies. At the same time, in this diagram, we could see the reciprocal path of prayer and power that flows to the possession of the people through the use of objects, either sacramentals or non-sacramentals, and their performance of popular devotion. The relationship between these three concepts, object, people, and piety, as a way to map and locate power in the practice of the people's popular devotion to the Black Nazarene, at the same time highlight that these three elements are essential in the practice of the devotion to the Black Nazarene in Quiapo, and each of these elements are interrelated with each other. Furthermore, this study will draw from the same frameworks in discovering and understanding the nature of power and its relationship with the concept of place and space and the performance of popular devotion surrounding the Nuestro Padre Jesus Nazareno of Quiapo. The methodology of this research is being conducted in a philosophical and phenomenological approach, drawing inspiration from the phenomenological study of Carpio and Reyes of De La Salle Las Marinas on the devotion to the miraculous San Agustin of Tanza, Cavite, where they diagram the katakol of Tataosteng and all of its elements, such as the image, the andas, the people, the letters, and even the clothes of the image into levels of meaning and symbolize it according to what the community has assigned it into. Second, online research, virtual interviews, observations through videos of the annual Traslacion procession, and incidences of local palangay processions and regular Friday devotional masses will be done, taking into consideration due to the limits imposed by the government because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Lastly, participants are devotees who have, at the very least, been a devotee of the Nazareno for 3 years. The rationale behind as to why devotees of not less than 3 years are to be chosen is because we have assumed that they have this grasp and understanding of their personal devotion to the Black Nazarene, the devotion of the community of the devotees, and how is it expressed, and the meanings behind it are understood. In the beginning of this presentation, I have mentioned that this is still an ongoing research in preparation for my final defense. And through the series of interviews that I have already conducted, I have found some preliminary findings on how the concept of power is perceived in the devotion to the Black Nazarene. First, the devotion redefines the meaning of power in Southeast Asia, where not only power is concrete, homogeneous, constant, and does not raise the question of legitimacy, but rather it is now shared among all and challenges the concept that power is concrete, which I will be explaining in a while. Second, the importance of fostering relationship with other devotees for or pakikipagkapwa in the elements of knowing the power of the Nazareno. We do not see a linear direction from God, the priest, and the people on how the flow of power is being directed, but rather we see it now among all devotees being shared from one another. Lastly, collective prayer Strength in numbers as a result of sama-samang pamimintuho manifests a redirected perception of power. With relationships between devotees coming into a new light, especially the role of the devotees in the concept of power in the devotion to the Black Nazarene. They become now agents of power and enablers of potency, or bisa. As I have mentioned moments ago, that the devotion challenges the concept of power, especially that power is concrete. It is because how devotees perceive it goes beyond what is tangible. Though we have objects such as images, handkerchiefs wiped to the image, rosaries, novena booklets that aid us in our prayer, the multitude and collective performance of our devotion is sufficient enough. As agents of this power, we become possessors of biyaya or grace in the form of symbols and objects. Our performative actions towards our kapwa of awa, lingap, kagandahan ng loob, and pagbibigay handog are manifestations of this power. An example would be the practice of the patanaw or dungaw of the replicas of the Black Nazarene during the time when the Church of Quiapo was closed to the public due to the Omicron surge. Devotees who possess images of the Black Nazarene brought it out of their homes for others to perform their panata. They now become agents of power and enablers of potency or bisa. An initial conclusion of mine is that the Nazareno devotion not only fits Anderson's definition but also adds or challenges it. Second, it is a unique devotion that manifests deeply of our Filipino philosophy, especially of the loob, the essence of the kalooban, and a reflection of how it behaves like the ancient mandalas of early Southeast Asian history. And lastly, this devotion is a case of a game changer on how can we fully understand our culture and our identity as a people and how we can understand the Southeast Asian region. So this concludes my presentation. Thank you so much for listening.